So good morning, everyone, and welcome back to our Lam Rim course. And let's get started. I think we usually have a set of prayers that are shown on the screen. Okay, so while reciting the prayers, it's good if you can to imagine the Buddha in the space in front. And imagine many other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas around him. And you can also imagine all other living beings around us, wishing that they could all engage in this learning of the Lam Rim along with us, and receive its benefit, so that they can be free of all suffering and the causes of suffering and reach perfect peace and happiness all the way up to enlightenment. So let's begin the prayers. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. And then the 7-limb prayer contains 7 different practices for accumulating merit, positive energy, and purifying negative energy like negative karma. So these are practices we need to do in order to make our mind more ready for attaining the realizations of the path. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate my own merits and those of all others to the great enlightenment. Now we imagine offering the whole universe, everything that's beautiful, pleasing, precious, imagining it as a pure land, and then wishing all sentient beings could experience this pure land. This ground anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niyatayami. So now we'll recite the mantra of the Buddha. While reciting it, imagine light and nectar flowing from the Buddha and you can imagine it coming from all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in this space in front of us. And it comes into our own bodies. You can imagine it going into the bodies of all other sentient beings surrounding us. Now our bodies and minds get filled with the light, and it has two functions. The light purifies all negative energy, negative karma, disturbing thoughts and emotions, and so on, as well as sickness, physical problems. It also purifies our mind of all disturbing thoughts and emotions, and nourishes our positive potential, our potential to cultivate all of the good qualities that the Buddha himself has, such as love, compassion, wisdom, and so on. So we have seeds of those qualities in our mind, and the light kind of nourishes them, like pouring water on seeds so they can grow and bring their result. No, in short, the light flowing from the Buddha fills us, clears away negative energy, and instills positive energy. Tayata Om Mani Mani Maha Manaye Soha. 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 Okay, so let's take a few more moments to make sure our motivation for being here, participating in this class, is a really positive one. We all feel love and compassion and concern for others, and the wish to help others, to relieve their suffering, help them have peace and happiness. So see if you can really expand that feeling to include everybody, all living beings, not excluding anybody. This is how the Buddha feels. Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, their love and compassion extends to all living beings. They don't reject anyone or abandon anyone or push anyone away. It's difficult, of course, to really feel that way. But even to think, oh, that would be nice. I would like to feel that way. And that's already a step in that direction. So really try to open your heart to all living beings and wish to benefit them as much as you can. And right now, our ability to help others is limited. But we do have the potential to go beyond our limitations. We all have Buddha nature, meaning we have the ability to become a Buddha, to become just like the Buddha. It takes time and energy to get to that point, but it is possible. So we can think of that as a long-term goal. Even to think how nice that would be. Wouldn't that be great if I could become a Buddha and have so many good qualities and abilities to be able to help all living beings. And that's really what this text is all about. The text that we're studying. It's the Lam Rim, the stages of the path to Buddhahood. What we have to do in order to become a Buddha. So we're extremely fortunate to have the chance to learn about this. And it's good if you can do it with the right reason, the right motivation, wanting to benefit all living beings. Okay. So it's been 2 months since we've met, and I'll just briefly review what we've been doing so far. So we're going through a text called The Easy Path, which has been translated into English. And this is one of the most important texts on the path to enlightenment, the Lam Rim. We started back in April, and the Lam Rim has 3 main sections, which are called 3 scopes. And in April and May, we learned about what's called a small scope, the first of the 3 scopes, the small scope. And the small scope is basically about recognizing we have a very fortunate situation at present, having this human body, human life, and in particular, having the chance to learn the Buddhist teachings, to have encountered the Buddha and his teachings and being interested in the Buddha and his teachings, wanting to learn more about them. So this is extremely fortunate. Not all living beings in the universe have such a life, such a situation. Because with this life, we have the ability to at least start following the path, creating the causes to become a Buddha ourselves. And so basically that's what that topic is all about, the precious human life. But then we have to realize that our life isn't going to last forever. It's going to come to an end at some point. We're going to die. And after we die, we're going to be born again. And we don't have any control over that. It's not a question of choice where we will be reborn, but it's our karma. If we have more good karma, if that is predominant, then we'll have a fortunate rebirth. But if we have a predominance of negative karma, then that will cause birth in an unfortunate situation, like an animal or as a hungry ghost or in hell. And so it's very important to think about that. And, if we realize, well, we want a fortunate life next time and not an unfortunate one, we have to learn how to ensure that. And mainly that's learning about karma, what constitutes good karma and bad karma, and then doing the best we can to avoid bad karma, negative karma, and create good karma. And in that way, we can ensure that our next life and other future lives will be fortunate ones, especially being able to have the same conditions we have in this life, being able to meet the Buddhist teachings and continue following the spiritual path. So from the point of view of the Lam Rim, that's the most important thing. That's the most crucial thing. So that's basically what's included in the small scope of the Lam Rim, and also refuge, the topic of taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So when somebody has learned the Buddhist teachings and feels strongly connected and interested and wants to live one's life in accordance with the Buddhist teachings, then they can take that step of taking refuge. And it's kind of like making a formal commitment to following the Buddhist path. And then in the last part of our course, which was in July and August, we looked at the middle scope. That's the second of the three main sections of the Lam Rim. So Venerable Dundrup, if you could put the slides up on the screen, I have some material to share about that. So the next slide. So this is a verse from a short text, which is called A Glance Meditation on All the Important Points of the Lam Rim. So this verse sort of summarizes the middle scope. So it says, independence on these. Now these refer to what was mentioned in the previous verse, which was about the small scope. And it refers to the practices of taking refuge and living in accordance with karma. Okay, so those are the main practices that we do in relation to the small scope. So it says independence on these, in other words, independence on taking refuge and living in accordance with karma, I am able to attain only the higher rebirths of humans and gods. So that's what we'll get by just taking refuge and living in accordance with karma, good rebirths as a human being or as a god in God realms. Not having abandoned afflictions, I have to experience uninterrupted, limitless, cyclic existence. And I just put in green letters in brackets to something I thought of, like a misery go round. So cyclic existence means we keep going through the same experiences again and again, dying and being reborn, dying and being reborn, dying and being reborn. And so it's a bit like going around and around and around in a Ferris wheel or a merry-go-round. But it's not a merry-go-round, it's actually a misery go-round. Cyclic existence is not fun. Of course, there's some nice experiences that we have, but they're interspersed with a lot of miserable experiences, a lot of painful experiences. And so as long as we're in samsara, as long as we're in this cycle, then we just keep experiencing suffering and problems and difficulties again and again and again and again and again. So it would be a bit like if you were stuck on a Ferris wheel or on a merry-go-round, going around once might be nice, but if it didn't stop and it just kept going around and around and around and around and you couldn't get off, you wouldn't feel that was fun. You would get freaked out and want to get off. Okay, so it's, yeah, cyclic existence is a misery go round, not a merry-go-round. So we need to understand that. And this happens, why we're in samsara is because of afflictions. Afflictions are disturbing states of mind, such as the three poisons, ignorance, attachment, aversion. So these are in our mind and we don't have any control over them. They just keep coming up again and again and again. They motivate actions that are afflicted, contaminated, and are the cause for continued existence in samsara, rebirth and suffering in samsara. So it's mainly because of afflictions. We have afflictions in our mind, and as long as we haven't abandoned those, then we're stuck. Those are the things that keep us stuck, kind of like chains, ropes, binding us to samsara. So this is not a nice situation at all. And then it goes on, by contemplating well how cyclic existence works, may I train day and night in the principal path of the three precious higher trainings, the means of attaining liberation. Okay, so we need to understand the mechanism, the process, how it is we are stuck in samsara, what it is that causes us to remain in samsara and perpetuate samsara. And by doing that, we can extricate ourselves, we can free ourselves and attain liberation, nirvana. And the main practice involved here is the 3 precious higher trainings, which are ethics, concentration, and wisdom. So these are the topics that we were looking at in the last part of this Lam Rim course. And so I hope you remember, those of you who followed it. And if you didn't follow it, if you're just joining this course for the first time, those teachings are available on the website, so you can go back and watch them. And then finally, please bless me with the potential to always train like this. So the main points we need to take away from the middling scope is to understand that the situation we are in, sometimes it's called samsara or cyclic existence, is completely unsatisfactory. And it can also be compared to being in a prison. It's another analogy for samsara. It's like being stuck in a prison, being locked in a prison. Nobody likes that. But we don't have to stay in this situation. There is a way out. Buddha found a way out, and he taught the way out. And the way out is mainly by practicing these 3 higher trainings, which start with ethics, living ethically, which basically means non-harmfully. Living our life in such a way that we refrain from harm, physical harm, doing harmful things to other living beings, and also verbally speaking harmful, hurtful words like lying and harsh words and divisive speech and so on. And even with our mind, that's more difficult. It's easier to, stop our mouth from saying hurtful things, stop our body from doing hurtful things, but more difficult to manage our mind. But it's possible. We can do it, watching our thoughts and trying not to let our thoughts go in negative directions like anger and hatred and wanting to do harmful things or wanting harm to come to others and so on. So yeah, that's basically what ethics is all about, is refraining as much as we can from harmful actions, non-virtuous actions, because doing harmful actions to others is also harmful for ourselves. That's good to realize. We're hurting ourselves when we hurt others. And if we care about ourselves, which we should care about ourselves and not create suffering for ourselves, then this is the way to do it. Just doing the best we can to refrain from harm. And then, so the ethics is the foundation. And then on top of that are the other 2 trainings of concentration and wisdom. And these are not in the Lam Rim, these are explained later in the great scope, which we're coming to now, in the context of the Bodhisattva path. So we'll get to those later. Okay, so now we're ready to move on to the great scope, the 3rd of the 3 main sections of the Lam Rim. So this is all about bodhicitta, how to develop bodhicitta and follow the Bodhisattva's path. So this is just an overview of what we're going to be looking at in the great scope. The first point says the 7-point cause and effect method for developing bodhicitta. So bodhicitta is something we can develop. Everybody can do it. It does take some effort, but it's possible. And there are 2 main methods for developing bodhicitta. The first one is this 7-point cause and effect method. And the other one is called equalizing and exchanging self and others. So the second bullet point is this other method for developing bodhicitta. So we'll go through those. Third bullet point is the bodhisattva vow. We won't spend a lot of time on that, but just, introduce what is the Bodhisattva vow, and then that's something people can take on their own. And then the last bullet point is the Bodhisattva deeds, the 6 perfections. These are the main practices a Bodhisattva does, the main activities of a Bodhisattva in order to bring themselves to enlightenment, create the causes for enlightenment. So we'll look at those 6: giving, ethics, patience, joyous effort, concentration, and wisdom. So these are practices done with the motivation of bodhicitta, wanting to become Buddha, to be able to help all living beings. So the next slide, please. So in the longer Lam Rim texts, such as Lama Tsong Khapa's Lam Rim Chenmo, the great stages of the path to enlightenment, there's a section on the benefits of bodhicitta, because it does take effort to generate bodhicitta. It's not something that's just going to happen. We have to put in a lot of effort. And if we can understand how beneficial bodhicitta is, we'll be inspired, we'll have energy to develop it. So this text that we're studying, the Easy Path, doesn't talk about the benefits of bodhicitta. So I have taken some from another book, which is called In Praise of Great Compassion. It's a new book. It's part of the Library of Wisdom and Compassion. They're mainly teachings by the Dalai Lama, edited by Venerable Thubten Yeshe. So it's this series of books published by Wisdom Publication. So this particular one is volume 5. It's called In Praise of Great Compassion. It's wonderful. It contains all about bodhicitta and the 6 perfections. Okay, so in that book, the Dalai Lama says that bodhicitta brings inconceivable and inexpressible benefits to oneself and others in this life and in future lives. And he starts off talking about benefits that we'll experience right here and now in this lifetime. So the first one is personal peace and happiness in this life. Because when we're cultivating bodhicitta, we'll have less critical, judgmental attitudes towards other people. So those attitudes make our mind really disturbed, unhappy, unpeaceful. So if we're reducing those kinds of thoughts, then naturally we'll have more peace and happiness. And the second is good health and good relationships with family and friends. So because if we have more positive thoughts, more love and compassion, and less self-centeredness and anger and so forth, then this will impact our health. There's actually research that shows the adverse effects of negative states of mind on our health. And positive states of mind are good for us, for our health. So our health will be better, and our relationships with the family and friends will be better as well. The next is having more hope, courage, confidence, and self-esteem. Okay, so these are some of the qualities we'll experience more of when we work on developing bodhicitta. And so with these qualities, we'll be able to face problems and difficulties and suffering that happen to us in our life without being overwhelmed by depression or confusion, low self-esteem, and so forth. Yeah, so you can see that with His Holiness. I've always been just amazed, in spite of the difficulties he's had in his life, with Tibet and what's happened to Tibet and the Tibetan people. He's always positive and optimistic and cheerful and joyful. Doesn't get down in spite of all those problems. And then next one is better able to deal with life's problems and difficult people. So bodhicitta and all the other qualities that come with bodhicitta give us the ability to be strong and resilient in the face of the problems and difficulties we face in life, such as sickness or difficult people, difficult circumstances, and so on. Then next one says more care for the environment and living beings. So it'll be good for the environment, because with bodhicitta, we care about sentient beings, and knowing that the environment, our planet, is the home for sentient beings. And if we trash, the world, our home, then it will have adverse effects on living beings. So bodhicitta will help us be more environmentally conscious and caring about how we live our life. And then the next one is dying with a peaceful mind and no regrets. So we're going to die one day, and we don't know when that's going to be. And naturally, at the time of death, we want our mind to be peaceful and not full of, fear and also regret, thinking about all the hurtful things we did in our life and feeling bad about that, and maybe feeling fearful about what's going to happen next. So if we live our life with compassion and kindness and bodhicitta to the best of our ability, then the way we live our life will naturally be more positive, more virtuous. And so we won't have so many regrets at the time of death. Our mind will be peaceful and calm. The Lama Zopa Rinpoche often says that the best state of mind to have at the time of death is compassion and loving kindness. And that's what we're cultivating with bodhicitta, making ourselves more and more familiar with compassion and loving kindness. So then naturally, we'll be able to have those in our mind as we die. And then he says, the next one, enriching our practices of the small and middle scopes. So the small scope, it mainly involves looking after karma. And it'll just be much easier with bodhicitta, because we'll understand that other people don't want to suffer, other beings, all beings don't want to suffer, and we'll care about that and not want to make them suffer. So it will really help us refrain from committing negative, harmful actions and do positive, virtuous actions instead. And then with the middle scope, the main practice there, again, is ethics, as well as concentration and wisdom. So with the motivation of bodhicitta, when we engage in those practices, they'll become much richer, much more meaningful, and we'll have more energy to do them as well. Finally, everything we do becomes the cause of enlightenment. So it said that even ordinary actions like eating and sleeping and working and playing, if we do those with the motivation of bodhicitta, really sincerely wanting to benefit all beings, wanting to become enlightened, help all beings, then even those ordinary actions become the causes that will eventually lead us to enlightenment. So it sort of magically transforms everything we do in our life, but especially our Dharma actions, our prayers, our meditations, our study, and so forth. So these are just a few benefits, but there are many more. Okay, so if we do feel interested in developing bodhicitta, there are methods to do so. The first method is called the 7-point cause and effect method. That's kind of a long title, but basically it means there are 7 points, and the first 6 points are causes, and the 7th point, bodhicitta, is the effect. So by practicing, meditating on the first 6 points, then bodhicitta will arise in our mind. But we can't expect that's going to happen just by doing it once. we have to meditate on these causes again and again and again, make ourselves very, very familiar with them. But by doing so, this is how we will generate bodhicitta. So even before starting the 6 causes, we are advised to develop equanimity. Equanimity is said to be a kind of foundation. And why that's not included in the 7-point cause and effect method, I don't know. But maybe the point is that there are some people who already have equanimity before they start trying to develop bodhicitta. So they don't need to do that separately. But probably most of us don't have equanimity, so we do need to put effort into generating that. So we'll look at that in a minute. But anyway, we start with equanimity, and then we meditate on these other points, recognizing that all beings have been our mother, recalling the kindness of our mother, wishing to repay the kindness, loving kindness, compassion, the exceptional attitude of universal responsibility, and then bodhicitta. So we'll start with these this today, but we won't finish all of them, so I'll continue next week. So we'll start with equanimity, assuming that some of you don't already have it. I know I don't. Okay, so the next slide. So another translation for equanimity is impartiality. So you might encounter that term sometimes. So even within Buddhism, the term equanimity or impartiality has different meanings. I won't go into all the different meanings, but the meaning in this context, the context of cultivating bodhicitta, is as explained here. First bullet point, equanimity is an even-minded attitude that is free of attachment to some beings and aversion to other beings. Okay, so us ordinary beings tend to have an attitude of bias towards other beings. We don't have equanimity. It isn't something that occurs naturally, spontaneously. And it's mainly because of our sense of self. You know, we have a feeling of an I, and our sense of self, our sense of I is exaggerated. You know, we believe we exist in a very real, solid, objectively existing way. We feel like there's a real self, a real I, a real me, which doesn't really exist. That's something we'll look at later in the context of wisdom. But anyway, we have this mistaken sense of self or I, and not realizing that we are mistaken about our sense of self or I. We totally buy into it, believe in it, and become very attached to our sense of self, our sense of I. So we tend to be selfish, self-centered. We feel as if I am the center of the world, I am the center of the universe, I am the center of everything. Everything revolves around me and my needs, my wishes, because we do want happiness, and there's nothing wrong with wanting happiness, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to not suffer. But the problem is we tend to feel I am more important than others. My happiness is more important than everybody else's, and my needs are more important. My need to avoid suffering is more important. So we tend to exaggerate our self-importance, the importance of ourself. And then that becomes the basis for how we look at others, how we look at the world. Okay, so those people who make me feel good, who fulfill my needs and my wishes for happiness, then we naturally feel, oh, those are good people. I like them. I want to keep them close to me. And we tend to have attachment, clinging, grasping to those people. And we probably have love as well. If it's our family and friends, we probably do have love for them and care for them. But usually our love is mixed with attachment. We can see that by what happens when people don't do what we want them to do. You know, we love people as long as they do what we want and don't go against our wishes and don't do anything, you know, that's unpleasant to us. And then suddenly our love disappears and we can get angry and hateful towards them. So that's a side effect of attachment. So it's our attachment that leads us to get angry at and even hateful towards and hurtful towards our supposed loved ones. So this is one thing that happens. And then there are other people that we dislike. We find them annoying, irritating, or maybe they are people who harm us, who make us suffer. And towards those people, because they don't make me happy, they don't do what I want, and they may even make me suffer and do what I don't want, then towards them we tend to have aversion and irritation, anger, even hatred, even aggressiveness, wanting to hurt them. And then there's another group of people that we neither like nor dislike. They kind of don't do anything for us. They don't make us happy. They don't make us suffer. So towards them, we just feel a kind of neutral indifference, you know, often just a lack of care. So that's our usual mode of being. And equanimity is the opposite to this. Equanimity is when we're free of these kind of attitudes of attachment to some, aversion to others. And instead, we see all living beings as equally deserving of our attention and our care. So you can imagine that's not so easy to do. But it is possible to work on it and develop it. And it's important to at least start working on cultivating equanimity before we work on developing bodhicitta, because that involves cultivating love and compassion. And if we don't have equanimity, then when we try to cultivate love and compassion, we'll be doing so in a biased way. We'll be thinking, I want those people over there to be happy. I want those people to be free of suffering, but not those people. Yeah, those people, they can suffer. I don't care. I don't want them to be happy. You know, so that's not right. You know, bodhicitta involves cultivating love and compassion for all living beings without exception. Then the second bullet point says its far enemies are attachment and aversion. Its near enemy is indifference. So this is actually from the Pali tradition. The Pali Sutras talk about like these enemies of equanimity. So the far enemy is like opposite state of mind. So the opposite state of mind is attachment and aversion. So as long as we're still strongly caught up in attachment to some, aversion to others, then that prevents us from having equanimity. And the near enemy is a state of mind that looks similar, but isn't really that. So indifference. And this is important because I think some people do, when they hear about equanimity, they think it means indifference. Yeah, you have indifference towards everybody. It isn't the same as indifference. Indifference is very different. It's an uncaring attitude based on ignorance, not understanding the true nature of things, not understanding even the conventional nature of things, and just not caring about people. Okay, so equanimity is not indifference. The way I think of it is more of a respectful attitude towards everybody, seeing everybody as worthy of our attention and our respect, and our care and our energy. Okay, so how to meditate on equanimity? There's different ways, but this is from the book, the easy path. So I'll just briefly explain it, and then we'll do this meditation just to try it out. So it recommends starting with a person towards whom we have neutral feelings, meaning not somebody we have strong attachment for, nor aversion for, but more neutral. So we could think of a neighbor, or, like when you go shopping, there might be a clerk, a cashier, somebody who works in the shop or the post office or the bank, and you kind of meet that person often, and it's not someone you're really close to and you don't have aversion for, but just someone kind of neutral. And then bring that person to mind, and then think about how this is another human being just like me, and they want to be happy and they don't want to suffer, and generate a sense of equanimity, free of attachment and aversion. And then do the same with two other people. First, someone we find appealing, someone we like, we find attractive or attracted to. And then with someone we find unappealing, someone we might feel kind of annoyed or irritated or whatever towards. So let's do this meditation just for a short time. So make yourselves comfortable. Try to sit with your back straight. You can close your eyes or leave them open a little to let some light in, to prevent sleepiness. So start by thinking of someone who is neither a friend nor an enemy. You don't have strong attachment nor aversion. It could be someone in your neighborhood or your community that you know and have kind of neutral feelings towards. And picture that person in front of you. And then contemplate that this is another human being, basically like yourself. They have a body and a mind. And within their mind, they have the wish to be happy, to have good experiences, pleasant experiences, and not to have any painful, unpleasant experiences. They don't want pain, they don't want sickness, they don't want bad things happening to them. Just spend a few moments contemplating that. So see if you can generate towards this person an attitude of equanimity, which means free of attachment, free of aversion, a respectful, caring attitude. Now, you can leave that person there in front of you, but bring to mind another person, this time someone you do have attachment for. Someone who's really important to you, and you probably care about them and love them, but there's also attachment, which is more ego-based, more a sense of, I want to keep you there close to me because you are good for me. You make me feel good. I don't know what I would do without you. So it's kind of like seeing the person as an object to fulfill our own needs and wishes. So bring to mind someone like that. Picture that person in front of you alongside the first person. And then contemplate how this person is basically just like you and just like the first person you thought of. Another human being with a body and a mind. And within their mind is the wish to be happy, to have good experiences, and the wish to not suffer, to not have bad experiences. And then see if you can generate the feeling of equanimity, a respectful, caring feeling for this person, free of attachment and free of aversion. And then bring to mind a third person, this time someone you don't like, someone towards whom you may have feelings of aversion, dislike, irritation. You want to keep them far away from you, not close to you. So imagine that person in front of you alongside the other two. And contemplate that this, again, is a human being with a body and a mind. And they wish to be happy and not suffer, just like you and just like the other two people. Now see if you can generate a feeling of equanimity towards this person, free of attachment, free of aversion. So that's just a short introduction to this meditation, but I encourage you to do it on your own, spending more time as much as you can. And to really be successful in generating equanimity, we need to work on our attachment and our aversion, our feelings of dislike, hatred. And we did look at methods for doing that in the previous part of the course when we were going through the middle scope, because attachment and aversion or anger are two of the main afflictive emotions that keep us in samsara. And so if we want to be free of samsara, we have to overcome those. And we start by reducing them, managing them. And then it's only the wisdom of emptiness that actually eliminates those completely. But in the meantime, we have to learn how to manage them so that our mind isn't totally under their control and we're acting them out. So the more we can work on reducing our attachment and our aversion, then the easier it will be to have equanimity. And generating equanimity doesn't mean that we're going to have the exact same relationship with everybody. That's just not realistic. It's only natural that there are some people we get along with and, can spend more time with and be more close to. And then other people, it's not easy to get along with them and spend time with them and be close to them and so on. So I'll just read something from Lama Tsong Khapa in his Lam Rim Chenmo, the great stages of the path. He says, it is not the notion of friend or enemy that you need to stop, but the bias that comes from attachment and hostility, which are based on the reason that some people are your friends and others are your enemies. And in a book called Achieving Bodhichitta by Serme Khenser Lobsang Tarchen, he explains this line from Lama Tsong Khapa to mean that temporary friend, temporary enemy, and temporary neutral person do in fact exist. But there's no such thing as a permanent, unchangeable enemy, friend, or neutral person. So my understanding of this is that when we're generating equanimity, we're not denying that some people are kind and helpful to us and it's easy to get along with them. And then other people may be harmful to us or just behaving in a harmful way to others. And it's just not easy to get along with them. And then there's others who don't fall into either of those two categories. But to understand that these situations are transitory, impermanent. And in fact, that is one contemplation we can bring into this development of equanimity, to just think how there's no such thing as a permanent friend, because a person we regard as a friend and we're very close to, something could happen to that relationship. We could get into an argument and turn into enemies. We've all had that experience. Somebody who was once a friend and then things change, and then we don't want to be around that person anymore and they don't want to be around us. So that does happen. So there's no permanent friend. And the same also with enemies, people we don't get along with at one point in time. Circumstances could change and suddenly we're able to get along with that person and even like that person. So there's no such thing as a permanent enemy. And then the neutral person, the one in the middle, that could go either way. That person could become a friend or they could become an enemy. So what kind of relationship we have with people, what kind of feelings we have with people are very fragile. dependent on circumstances, dependent on karma, dependent on many different factors. So that's a very helpful thing to contemplate, to break down this view of a permanent, concrete, inherently existing friend who will be my friend forever and ever and ever, and will never have any problems. And the same with an enemy. So contemplating the impermanent nature of things is also a very helpful way of breaking down our attachment and our aversion and having more equanimity. Okay, so I'd like to move on to the next point. We'll do that a little bit now, and we'll probably have to continue next time. Okay, so the first actual point in the 7-point cause and effect is recognizing all beings as our mothers. This is extremely difficult, I think, for most Western people, because it requires belief in rebirth, and not just rebirth, but infinite lives, going back from beginningless time. So I have here a quotation from the Buddha. This is from one of the Pali Sutras in the Pali Canon. So these are the actual words that are the basis of this idea. Buddha said, bhikkhus are monks. So he's talking to his monks. This samsara is without discoverable beginning. A first point is not discerned of beings roaming and wandering on, hindered by ignorance and fettered by craving. It is not easy, bhikkhus, to find a being who in this long course has not previously been your mother. And then he goes on to say the same about father, brother, sister, child, and so on. So this is the Buddha's own words. The Buddha himself did say this, that because there's no beginning to samsara, this wheel of dying and being reborn over and over and over again, didn't start anywhere. This is always hard for us to understand, but yeah, this is what the Lamas say. Samsara is beginningless. Our mind is beginningless. So what this means is that, yeah, the second bullet point, samsara is beginningless, and so is our mind and our wandering from life to life. We have had innumerable lifetimes. There's no number on how many lives we've had before this one. It's uncountable. And in many of those lives, maybe not all of them, but most of them, we have had mothers. There was a mother that gave birth to us, that brought us into the world. And so we've had countless mothers. We can't count the number of mothers we have. And it's not always the same being in every lifetime who's been our mother. Like the mother of our present life, it's not that she has always been our mother in all our previous lives. That wouldn't make sense. So we've had other beings have been our mother, have played the role of mother. And as the Buddha said, I can't find somebody who has not been your mother. Yeah, we've had countless lives. There's also countless beings, but every single being has at least once, probably more than once, been our mother. So if you're hearing this for the first time, you might feel shocked. And even if you're hearing it for the second or third or 100th time, it's still kind of a pretty wild idea and probably not easy to accept. But even the Tibetans, yeah, they say, even for them, they believe in rebirth and they've been Buddhist since they came out of the womb. But even they have difficulty to really accept this. But on the other hand, the third bullet point says, if it's difficult to accept, ask yourself if you can be sure that any specific being has not been your mother in a previous life. Okay, so if we try to prove the opposite, if we try to say, oh, that person who lives next door, or that person driving the car on the other side of the road has not been my mother, can we be sure of that? Can we prove that? Can we prove that anyone has not been our mother? So we probably can't. Mostly because we can't remember. Most people can't remember previous lives. And even those who do have memories of past lives, they probably only remember a few, 1 or 2 or 3, but not all of the past lives. And then being able to recognize who was our mother in a previous life. Yeah, because they were in a certain form in that time, but they're in a different form now. So, being able to recognize this person was my mother. So it's not something we can have a direct experience of at this point in time anyway. But on the other hand, if we try to prove opposite, if we say, no way, that person was definitely not my mother, I'm sure of that. Well, how can we be sure? Can we be sure? Or is it just some feeling we have? So try to keep an open mind, even if it's difficult, challenging. I still find it difficult, but on the other hand, I find it quite a beautiful idea. It's a beautiful idea to think that, oh, this person was once my mother. Now, the last bullet point kind of addresses the issue that, now, so why are we thinking about every being has been our mother? Because normally our mother is the person who's given us the most, who's been the most kind to us. Because she gave our life, she gave this body that we have came from her. She gave her womb so that our body could grow and come to, full form. And then we were born, we came out of her. And then in most cases, it's our mother who gives us the most care, who feeds us, and changes our diapers and holds us when we're frightened or sad and crying, wanting attention. That's usually the mother who gives us the most, especially when we're very small and helpless and in need, incredible needs. We wouldn't survive if we didn't have somebody giving us that kind of 24-hour-a-day care. We'll look at that next. The next point in the practice is actually thinking about the kindness of mothers. But there are some cases of people who have a mother that wasn't very kind, and some mothers are neglectful. They don't take care of their child, they even abandon their child. And others are abusive. But I think those cases are rare. I think they are the exception rather than the norm. Most mothers, I think, do care for their child to the best of their ability. I mean, they're human beings, they make mistakes, they have their needs and they get upset and so on, but they do try their best. So if it's the case that your mother of this lifetime wasn't kind or maybe was even abusive, then you can replace her with somebody else. You can think of some other person in your life who did care for you, maybe your father, an aunt, grandmother, a big sister. So you can replace your mother with some other person who did care for you, especially when you were small and vulnerable, fragile, very much in need of care. So we've run out of time for this class, but yeah, next week we'll look at the next point, which in the next slide is thinking about the kindness of mothers. And this is such a beautiful meditation. Just thinking about, because most of us don't remember being a baby, which is when we did receive so much care from our mother. We don't remember that, but we can still imagine what our mother did for us, how she cared for us, especially if you're a mother yourself. some of you may have had that experience of being a mother. You know what's involved in taking care of a child. And then if you think about your own mother and, oh, she did this for me. Wow, amazing. I remember one woman telling me that she had a real problem with her own mother until she became a mother. And then she realized, wow, taking care of a baby is so hard. It's so much work. My mother did this for me. So it really helped her to heal her relationship with her mother and appreciate her mother's kindness. So we'll go into that next week. And so in the meantime, if you skip over to the last slide. So yeah, if you could read the pages in the Easy Path related to the sevenfold cause and effect. It's quite a few pages, but it's beautiful, beautiful reading, not so difficult like reading about emptiness or something. So try to read that for next week, and then we'll continue, and maybe we'll be able to finish these 7-point cause and effect by next week, or in next week's class. And if you can, between now and then, do some meditation on your own, or Venerable Dundrup will be leading a meditation tomorrow morning on some of these paths. The equanimity meditation is very good. So try to do that one. You can also think about how all beings have been our mother and just see what that does to your mind. And the kindness, yeah, you can go on and think about that one as well if you feel ready to. Otherwise, we'll continue with that next week. And again, if you have questions, we usually don't have time during class for questions, but you can write those in to the center, and then I'll incorporate them in my talk for the following week. So let's do the dedication prayers for the class, dedicating the merit, the positive energy from listening to this talk, doing the little meditation that we did, doing it all with good motivation, the Bodhichitta motivation. So we've created some good energy, and now we share that with all other beings. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel Bodhichitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. Incomparably kind and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-fulfilling, wish-granting jewel, source of every benefit and happiness in this world, may you have a long life and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. You who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayers honoring the three sublime ones, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. Okay, so thank you to Mary, Venerable Dundrup, all the people who made this happen, and all of you who joined. I wish you all a good week and see you next week.
Thank you, Venerable.
Bye.